Hello and good evening, everyone. Um, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Vi Bui, and I'm the regional organizer in Ontario, Quebec for the Council of Canadians. Um, uh, I would like to introduce a quick video we'll be watching after this of the song King of the Whole. It's the song from the successful campaign against the mega quarry almost 10 years ago. The Council of Canadians was proud to stand alongside folks from the North Dufferin Agricultural Community Task Force, or NDAC, as we successfully pushed back against a proposed mega quarry in the Melanchthon Township. The council and our chapters have been part of several other fights against gravel pits across this province because we know these projects destroy the ecosystem, gobble up precious farmland, threaten the water, undermine local democracy, and continue to contribute to the climate crisis. We believe it's time that communities come together to change the context in which these projects operate. And that's why we're so pleased to be a coalition partner of the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition. So, and here's the video.
Farmland for sale or rent, to dig and make a quarry that makes no sense. Potatoes, that's not what we meant. And now you want environment assessment. I said 2 hours from Toronto, we got limestone to build more condos. We're the Highland Company, king of the whole. Well, we crushed all the houses and raised the barns, make it look like a wasteland had never been farmed. At 3,000 trucks a day, heck, we may even buy the Owen Sound train. I said, no soil, no birds, no trees. We're getting rid of them pesky honeybees. We're the Highland Company, the king of the whole. Well, we cut all the rivers off at their source. Heck, somebody's got to exploit this resource. Pump 600 million liters a day, or we can ship it down to the USA. There ain't no need to plant and grow. We can import all of your potato. We're the Highland Company, the king of the whole. All the politicians and the lawyers' names, spin the facts so they have a green sound. Try to buy every mayor in every town. I said, farmland for sale or rent, to dig or make a quarry that makes no sense. We're the Highland Company, king of the whole, king of the whole, king of the whole, king of the whole, king of the whole.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Before we get started tonight, I'm going to just take a few moments and go over a few Zoom tips with you tonight. So the first is that we do have closed captions available for this meeting. You can turn those on by clicking the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and adjusting the subtitles there to show the subtitles. You have been muted tonight so that we can hear all of our wonderful speakers, but we really do want to hear from you. So we invite you to use the chat as much as possible to ask any questions, to communicate with each other. Let us know where you're joining from. So we'll ask you to get us started by letting us know where you're joining from and why you're here tonight. We are recording this meeting so that we can send it out to you and to all the folks who aren't able to make it here tonight. So you can look for that in your inbox later. If you do have any questions or require tech support during the meeting, you can send me a direct message by searching my name here, Megan, and you'll see that it's Megan with a line and Water Watchers. Or you can email me at wellingtonwaterwatchers.ca. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie to get us started with the rest of the event.
Hi, thanks, Megan. My name is Katie Krylov. I'm the Ontario campaigner for the Wilderness Committee, and we work for people-powered protections for wetlands, woodlands, wildlife, and climate. I'm joining today from Tekaronto, the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabeg, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat, and within the lands and waters covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty Territory. The Wilderness Committee is pleased to be a partner with the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition, and I'm excited to work with the planning team for the Dam campaign, because for too long I've witnessed local communities spend untold time and resources on battles to save precious water and lands that they love, within rules that are always stacked against them. It's always been especially shocking to me that pit and quarry proponents are not required to show need for the product, even as they endanger species at risk habitat and threaten drinking water and the health of communities. The time has come for a concerted effort from all of us to challenge the power of the aggregate extraction industry in this province and send a message to our public representatives and policymakers. Enough is enough. Next, I am overwhelmingly grateful and honored to introduce Elder Marilyn Longlade Capriol, who will be opening our meeting today. Marilyn is Anishinaabe from Shawanaga First Nation and was raised on the waters of Georgian Bay amongst family and community, where she learned teachings, songs, and stories, and to respect and understand the gifts of water, wind, animals, plants, and sky. Throughout her life, she has been an active volunteer as a founding member of French River Visitor Center First Nation Advisory Committee, past president of the Circle of Directors for Name Res, a shelter for Indigenous men in Toronto. She is an elder with the Indigenous Circle for the Canadian Biosphere Reserves Association, Plenty Canada, and the Conservation Through Reconciliation Elders Lodge at Guelph University. Miigwech, Marilyn, for being here today to start us off in a good way. I'll turn it over to you.
Libish Quadish no cause a Maquado down. Shawana Godunjaba, Monadugami. Mino Debek, Mina Kinawaya. Miigwech Shamanado, Mishomas Nokamasak, for letting us to gather here through spirit and goodwill. My name is simply Water. Carried that all of my life. I sit in the lodge of the Bear Clan family. Our people, our ancestors come from Shawanaga First Nation, and I've always lived on the islands and waters in that territory. We talk about our greatest medicine, water, and I'd like to acknowledge her this evening. But before I do that, when we talk about acknowledging the land, and we should actually just do that, that is a woman. She is governed under a moon system, also acknowledged on the back of a turtle. The 13 sections on that turtle back depicts the number of moons in 1 year cycle. And around the shell of that turtle woman. She carries 18 or 28 markings at the bottom of the shell, which we call her fringes. The exact days between each moon. We are celebrating right now the little spirit moon. We're halfway through. What transpires in this land during this moon cycle is that grandmother has laid her great blanket down over the land. She called the ones that hibernate to go on that vision quest within her cavity again, that earth. She has called the wind to help the seeds fall, the cones, protect the roots. The ones that live under the water is just the same. The plants, the swimmers, and the ones that need to harbor in the muds over the long winter moons. The snow that comes now, those additional blankets, and the cool that comes now is very much needed for the sacred medicine called water, Nibi. Holding her water is that gracious cup called granite, stone. And we refer to that as grandfather. If we lose that stone in its natural gift from Creator, we lose the sacred medicine. And in hopes of our gathering this evening, there were special requirements, and I'd like to thank my young helper, Katie. She was a Scabe Bewis woman helper. She fed the spirit for today, the understanding, the relationships, the two-eyed seeing and thinking. She put that sama out, and when she did, she is the caretaker of the spirit of this very day. I would also like to acknowledge our beautiful and sacred men. Why? Because we have developed new ways, still continuing ceremony together, gathering together in a different way. Our voices and our spirits of connection is coming through ethical space that the men are allowing us to pass through. And that is that airspace between earth and sky man. So I say miigwech to beautiful men. And in the winter, there is a fruit that we celebrate, and it is the last fruit of the year. It is simply called the cranberry, and this cranberry is the medicine for our beautiful men. It has a hard protective coat and totally round and circle, and that's for that work that our men need to do during the year culturally. In the past, before we had live-in high rises and all of those places. If we cut that cranberry in half, it gives us direction as well. It is 4 squares, four pieces in the middle. And each one of those cavities contains seed. And that seed is the promise of the original life that was gifted to us in the beginning. And acknowledging those words and the spirit of the sacred medicine of water, Moyen. Miigwech Manda, Nabish, Nabishing, Gado, Visaging. Nabishing ga Tibish na Gidal. Nibi Benikuna. Nabish Gaminguna. Nabish Montowin Gaminguna. Miigwech Shamanado. Mishomas Nokamasak. Miigwech. That prayer to the water is giving thanks for giving us life, for giving us life in the first lodge that we live in, that is inside our mother, and for hearing the first heartbeat through the transition of that sacred water. So I say, friends, sisters, brothers, grandparents, and the children that are in this circle this evening, let's have a grand celebration. Miigwech.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Graham Flint, and sitting beside me virtually is Sarah Harmer. Sarah and I welcome you to this historic event, the gathering of individuals from across the province who are committed to reforming gravel mining in Ontario. Welcome to the launch of the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition. This night is a culmination of many months' work. In fact, it was last May when the Water Watchers first convened a meeting of the Gravel Mining Study Group. That group was charged with forming a consensus on the issues, developing a campaign plan, and organizing this broad-based coalition. And what a response we have had. There are over 1,200 people who have RSVP'd for tonight's event from a similarly large number of individual devices. Just imagine what this would be like if we were able to gather all in a hall together. Just imagine the impact we will have when we all raise our voices about this issue. I also want to acknowledge that we're welcoming a number of representatives from the industry in the crowd tonight. So we're glad that you joined us. This is an issue that we want to bring to your attention, and we hope that you learn about our perspectives as you listen tonight. We hope everyone's settled in for an evening full of relevant information from a list of incredible speakers. Given how cold it is expected to be tonight, probably being inside is the best place to be. Please, as Megan suggested, use the chat box to introduce yourself and let you know where you're from. We're absolutely amazed at the breadth of organizations that are representative and the distances that people are connecting from. So thank you for joining us. Please also feel free to post questions and comments as the evening unfolds. We're going to ask our speakers and any one of you who can weigh in and add your perspective and answer some questions to please do that. Let's keep the dialogue going as we work through our agenda. Before I turn things over to Sarah, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer by training, and I've worked in oil and gas and then the high-tech sector, both domestically and overseas. And lately, I've been engaged in renewable energy and as a community advocate. I've been involved with gravel mining for almost 2 decades now. My first exposure was when our community was threatened by proposal, which we defeated after a long, protracted 9-year battle. But after that, I was so outraged by what we experienced, I went on to work with Gravel Watch Ontario, serving as their president for the last 6 years. I've now joined the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition in order to raise the issue associated with gravel mining across Ontario and to demand that our governments do something about it. Sarah?
Thanks, Graham. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Harmer. I'm really happy to be with you all tonight. Thank you to Marilyn for that beautiful welcome mat and introduction. So thank you. I am a singer-songwriter typically, but I have long been passionate about our natural world, and I have found myself involved over the years in issues of water protection, energy, and extractive industries. 17 years ago, I stood up alongside many citizens and spoke up for the prime farmland, the wetlands, the endangered species, the well water that were all under threat on Burlington's Mount Nemo because of a massive gravel mining proposal. After 8 years of study and review and millions of public money spent, the proposal was soundly defeated in 2012 by all levels of government, including the province. Now, remarkably, the company, whose owners include multinational giant Lafarge Holcim, have come back just a few years later to try again to industrialize even more of the same land on Mount Nemo. Well, from those early days, 17 years ago, when I was first diving into the world of gravel mining, I have admired Graham Flint. He was just up the road from us in Burlington in Flamborough, Ontario. And I knew Graham as a great community leader, as a deeply knowledgeable and committed person, committed to responsible stewardship. And I am very inspired to be working alongside Graham and so many other dedicated people in the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition.
Thanks, Sarah. As we get started, let's start with a quick terminology explanation. Technically, what we are here to talk about tonight is aggregates, the collection of stone, sand, and gravel. But the general public doesn't really understand the term aggregates. Show them a road made of stone or gravel, and they'll call it a gravel road. So that's the term we've chosen for this campaign, gravel, and that's the term we're going to go with. So I already see something in the question about in the chat box about, are you dealing with more than gravel? And we certainly are. Generally, gravel mining is not a benign, harmless activity. It destroys the natural environment and damages local communities. The existing permissive government policy sets the conditions for gravel mining to establish as many sites as possible. Communities across Ontario have waged and are waging numerous David and Goliath battles to protect their families, their homes, and their communities. It is time we all join together and demand that excessive destruction and injustice associated with gravel mining comes to an end.
We know that gravel mining can have far-reaching negative impacts. We see degraded landscapes, stripped of soils, and the complex web of life that they support. We can see wetlands and well water dry up or become contaminated. We see animals and plants put at risk, some that are already on our endangered species list, made even more vulnerable and often sacrificed in the name of profit. Gravel mining contributes to the loss of connectivity on the landscape for wildlife. And this is a really important point. Connected and healthy systems underpin our own health and the health of all the life around us. During gravel mining operations, we can see legal limits for vibration and noise often exceeded, impacting homes and our quality of life. We can get untested and often unregulated fill and construction waste dumped below the water table, further jeopardizing our drinking water. On the other hand, as Marilyn beautifully talked about, consideration is not given to the important functions that these geological deposits serve in the ground, filtering and holding our water, creating rich wetland habitats, and helping with flooding and stormwater management.
The basics of gravel mining aren't complicated. The product is either blasted and crushed from solid rock formations or scooped up from loose deposits. It's washed and put into trucks for delivery to job sites. Since it's a bulky, heavy product, the cost associated with transporting it makes up a large portion of the final product price. And as a result, operatives want to have gravel mines as close as possible to where the markets are. And each operator wants to have a site near wherever a competitor is or where a market is. This leads to land banking and multiple sites far in excess of what is really needed. And making this natural sort of industry behavior even more pronounced, in Ontario, we have a formal provincial policy, planning policy, that states there is no need to show need for a new gravel mining site. And I just want to repeat that. We have a formal policy from the provincial government that says there's no need to show need for gravel sites. As we've researched the situation and prepared to launch this campaign, several interesting facts stood out to us. The first one we want to share with you tonight is that the provincial government has authorized annual extraction limits of over 13 times the amount of gravel actually used in Ontario every year. Not double the amount, not 5 times or 10 times the amount, but 13 times the amount that we actually use. And that number, that calculation, didn't include the 15% of sites that have an unlimited extraction tonnage limit. So the actual ratio of the authorized extraction limit is far greater than 13 times.
Over the last 3 decades, we've seen on average over 5,000 acres of new lands licensed for gravel mining in Ontario every year. That's almost 7,000 football fields every year. And all of this licensing happens without honoring treaties with Indigenous nations and obligations prescribed in our Canadian Constitution and in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which is law in Canada.
Municipalities across Ontario are involved in appeals with the gravel industry over property taxes. In Pushlands Township, located in Wellington County, a single family home is paying more property tax than a 100-acre gravel mining site. This shifts the overall property tax burden from major industrial users to small businesses and residents.
And it can't be overlooked that gravel mining is the raw material for many of the activities that are fueling the climate crisis. Cheap gravel feeds highways, cement production, and sprawl, all things that need to be curbed in order to deal with intensifying greenhouse gas emissions and climate chaos.
All this has led us to call for a pause, a timeout, a moratorium on new gravel mining approvals across Ontario. We need to stop the march of this industry across the landscape. It is time to convene an independent panel of experts to chart a new path forward. The people of Ontario deserve better than the status quo. Here's a short video that highlights some of what we've been talking about.
We're in too deep. For decades, the gravel mining industry has blasted, dug, crushed, and trucked across Ontario with apparent impunity. And we've let them. Year after year, the leaders we've given the job of protecting our province to have handed them the shovels and said, "Go, dig more. Go dig over 5,000 enormous sites in our backyards. Go dig out 13 times more gravel every year than what we use. Go destroy 5,000 acres of land a year and take up to 4.6 billion liters of precious water every day. Go destroy the natural environment and damage our communities while paying less property tax than some single families do. Go accelerate the climate crisis by feeding sprawl, highways, cement production, transportation, and other massive causes of greenhouse gases. And finally, go do it all without any consent of First Nations, as our Constitution says you must. It's already too late for some communities. Those who bravely fought the impossible David versus Goliath battles, they rarely had a chance to win. This multinational, foreign-owned industry is so unchecked and self-regulated and so deep-pocketed that the moment you try to stop one site, another appears somewhere else. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to say enough. No more new sites, period. We, the people of Ontario, demand that our government impose an immediate moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals until an independent panel can chart a new path forward. One that will honor First Nations treaties and obligations, prevent more climate destruction, protect groundwater and farmland and endangered species, and give the communities dealing with these sites more say in how land use is decided. Sign the petition to demand a moratorium now at reformgravelmining.ca.
So tonight we will hear from a number of speakers. We're just going to do a rundown for you here, just so you get an idea of the layout of the event. So we will kick the evening off with comments from Courtney Skye from Protect the Tract.
We're going to hear from Tim Gray, the Executive Director of Environmental Defense, about their longstanding work on gravel mining issues.
We will hear from David Donnelly, municipal and environmental lawyer who has represented numerous communities in gravel mining matters.
And interspersed between those segments, we'll hear from representatives of community groups who are on the ground today dealing with gravel mining issues in their communities.
Next, we will be introducing Rick Bonnet, mayor of Halton Hills, a jurisdiction very familiar with gravel mining. And that will be followed by representatives from all three opposition parties in Ontario. And to cap it all off, we will be sharing with you an overview of the campaign, the next steps, how you can be involved, because we can only make this happen together with broad support.
Our goal tonight is to confirm our commitment to work together to reform gravel mining in Ontario. And the first step is to demand and win a moratorium on new gravel mining approvals until we can chart a new path forward. Enough is enough. It's time to end the destruction and injustice that has been allowed to occur for far too long. It's time to demand a moratorium now. DAMN. It's time to launch this damn campaign.
And it's now my pleasure to introduce Courtney Skye. Courtney is Mohawk Turtle Clan from 6 Nations of the Grand River Territory. She is a research fellow at the Yellowhead Institute in Toronto. Welcome, Courtney.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I just want to thank Elder Marilyn Capriel for the opening, and I wanted to speak a bit to the work of my colleagues and the folks that we work with on the Haldeman Tract Moratorium on Development. Thank you, Sarah, for the opening. And I'm a Mohawk citizen. I'm also a citizen of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an Indigenous nation that is home to the Nanfan Treaty area. And last year in April, the Confederacy Chiefs Council announced a moratorium on development on the Haldeman Tract. The Haldeman Tract, or what might be known as 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, was affirmed through the Haldeman Proclamation in 1784. And it grants access to the 6 Nations and their descendants use of the river. It's nearly 4 million acres. In compensation for the sacrifice of our nations for our alliance with the British Crown during the American War of Independence. This land was promised to us and our descendants forever. And that's actually what it says in our treaty. But right now, our reserve has shrunk. It's only about 5% of that actual territory space. And it's had a devastating impact on our community. So for the Haudenosaunee at Grand River, we want to talk about the experience of what this has meant to have this unwanted development and the impacts of this on our community. There's a real reliance and silencing of our inherent governance structure, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And it's the Confederacy and the Haudenosaunee that maintain our distinct worldview, our ceremonial practices, and we have those still, despite many generations of colonial violence and violations of our rights. Our traditions and our cultural knowledge are something that we have an absolute right to practice, and we have an absolute right to pass that on to future generations. And when we talk about healing and restoring our nationhood, we have to start with healing and drawing that healing from the land and water, and restoring our stewardship and governance over our land and waters. It's the biggest priority to healing our clans from the dispossession that we've experienced. We have stewarded this land since time immemorial, and the land is essential to how we express our culture. Our laws are drawn from the land, and we understand our specific responsibilities to those lands and waters. Which means that for us, we have to consider that everything we're using comes at the expense of our future generations. And we have to ensure that lands and waters remain healthy enough to provide for coming generations, not just the next generation, but every generation that's going to come after us. So Protect the Tract is a Haudenosaunee-led campaign to call for this moratorium and amplify the moratorium along the Haldeman Tract. we're seeking to end the unwanted development that's happening across our territories, but to enact, a vision of a future that is self-determined and based in our inherent right to protect our lands for future generations of Haudenosaunee children. And with the moratorium put in place, it will mean that the Haudenosaunee will exercise our jurisdiction over lands and waters in a way that maintains the delicate balance between creation and human beings. That we're going to focus on sustainability and responsiveness to climate change to protect waterways and ecologically sensitive areas. And so to end, I just want to say that, sometimes these conversations around reconciliation can be a little bit overwhelming. But I think when the Haudenosaunee Chiefs Council announced the moratorium back in April, they spoke to their faith in Canadians, and that they feel that the majority of Canadians also want to seek justice. They also want to know that these historic injustices are being addressed, and that the way that we're going to move forward in this is that we have respect and trust between us, and that we can find a mutually agreeable solutions that will reflect the longstanding friendship that has existed between our nations. Thank you for having me, and thank you for joining the launch of the campaign today.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Together, yes, longstanding relationships, and we endeavor to make those stronger and healthier. And thanks very much for your work and your comments. So we'll now hear from two community leaders about their gravel mining experiences. Here are videos of Ray Owl, Traditional Ecological Knowledge Elder, and Sam Lernout from Citizens for Safe Groundwater.
The quarries, I really don't, they don't do enough studies on them. Not enough. They think just taking a rock, go and pile it up someplace is good. It doesn't. Because when you disturb the environment, how are you going to put it back in place? You don't have a plan. Everybody's, just go pile a rock and you pay your dues to the crown, and you've done it. That's not the case. First Nations is the one that's going to be living here after you guys are gone. And we've got to try and exist in what's remaining.
Do you think that there's a chance? Do you think that First Nations can stop that quarry?
I think so, sure.
How?
How? Just saying no. Say no. This is our territory, and you're not having any kind of development until we're satisfied. Not the government satisfied, we're satisfied. It's a treaty issue. 21 First Nation have to approve it. If it's all right, if it's safe. When we do something like this, we're not talking about just today's presence. We're talking generations that's going to be coming down the road. My grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and the ones that are not born yet.
Get me out of here.
Hi, I'm Samantha Lernout, part of Citizens for Safe Groundwater. We are a community organization currently looking at the proposed Hallman Pit in Wilmot Township. I am standing on top of prime farmland and a regional groundwater recharge area. I am taking this video to discuss our concerns with the aggregate industry in Ontario. Based on my experience with open pit mines, there is no need, only greed. The Ontario government's inadequate regulation of the gravel mining industry means that the proposed Hallman Pit could be approved, while 7 licensed open pit mines directly across the road operate at only 10%. This unnecessary pit, if approved, will destroy approximately 150 acres of prime farmland that can never be restored to its former productivity, based on expert testimony and from the position of the OFA and other farming organizations. In a province with less than 2% of land designated as prime farmland, we must not undervalue the importance of protecting this agricultural land in our sustainable food system and for our continued economic prosperity in the farming sector. I would argue that close to market farmland is more important than close to market aggregate, based on the fact that this land is a bit scarce in Ontario and the interconnected nature of our sustainable food system. Every piece of farmland is vital in the food network, and these farming businesses must operate in close proximity to each other and the market in order to stay in business and continue to feed cities. We don't need another pit, and we can't afford to keep losing our prime farmland to development. Secondly, the proposed Hallman pit sits atop a sensitive groundwater recharge area, municipal wellhead protection area, protected countryside, and a significant wetland. Allowing an open pit mine would remove the very sand and gravel that filters our drinking water to all but 1.5 meters of the water table. On top of that, there would be intake of asphalt and concrete repurposing, stockpiling, and aggregate washing atop of the sensitive groundwater recharge area. The company will earn more profits while the people bear the costs. This is not a benign land use. There are existing businesses and families whose health and safety will be compromised while one profits. This is an unacceptable precedent for the people of Ontario. The aggregate industry has a dangerously long leash in Ontario, and the impact of this operation are felt by those around the operations physically and mentally. The applicant-driven process, weighted heavily in favor of the developer, needs a check. A moratorium on all new aggregate applications is necessary in order to pull the leash in and appropriately consult with the public to find a better way to sustainably access aggregate in Ontario.
Powerful messages from those people that are on the ground dealing with these issues. Thank you to those groups for putting their messages forward. And I was reading some of the chat messages as they've gone by, and I know that those messages are resonating with you the same way they did with me. By the way, I've noticed that some of you have gone off to the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition website and signed the petition. We'll encourage all of you to do that. We're also going to place in the chat box links to our social media accounts, be it Twitter and Facebook. And we encourage you to join and help amplify the messages as we move through the evening and in the days and weeks to come. So thank you. I'd now like to introduce Tim Gray, the Executive Director from Environmental Device. Tim, over to you.
Making sure I unmuted myself. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Sarah. Nice to see so many people here tonight. As Graham mentioned, my name is Tim Graham, Executive Director of Environmental Defense, and our organization works to link Canadians to solutions on climate change, plastic waste, toxic chemicals, protecting our fresh water, and throughout Southern Ontario around trying to create more livable communities. There's an interesting kind of arc of how our governments in Ontario have recognized the consequences of sprawl and poor land use, and slowly have tried to do something about that. For those of you that have paid attention to these issues over the years and experienced things in your own backyard, you'll know that some of the earliest movements to address the just insane way that we use land in this province started with the births of conservation authorities. And one of the most novel and interesting watershed-based management systems in North America. And that was done to try to address the massive erosion and flooding caused by clearing lands that never should have been developed. jump forward into the 1970s and 1980s, and we had the creation of the Niagara Escarpment Plan, the legacy of which we all still benefit from today. And that was brought in by Bill Davis, who was a conservative politician, long-standing conservative premier who just passed away recently. And then, further jumping forward again, we started to realize that the sprawl that we'd launched so aggressively after the Second World War, suburbs everywhere, linked by cars, the only way you could get from a city to where you lived or your job or the school was in a car. We really started to recognize the consequences of that. How many highways were being built, how many aggregate pits needed to be dug to supply all of the gravel for those highways, the pollution caused by all of that. And we started to try and make some changes with the introduction of different forms of planning. The Mike Harris government brought in something called smart growth, which was the first kind of move away from a reliance on sprawl as our only mechanism for growing the places where we lived and worked. And then they also brought in the Oak Ridges moraine protection. So you think of where the Niagara Escarpment is, well then the Oak Ridges moraine, which I'm sure many of you know about, is a very important relic of the end of the glacial period that forms a ridge that links the Niagara Escarpment and goes all across the north part of the GTA. That is the source of most of our creeks and our rivers and our drinking water in Lake Ontario. That Oak Ridges moraine was the focus of ongoing debates about whether it should be protected or whether a lot of it should be dug up for gravel quarries or developed for cities. Jump forward a little bit more, and we expanded that further to create the green belts and the growth plan, which was meant to have development occur within cities, concentrated development within cities, better transit, less sprawl, less use of natural resources, more protected farmland. And then, jump forward to 2018, and the conservative government that got elected then, in my experience, has been the most regressive government on these issues, on environmental files, that I've ever worked with in 30 years of working across the country. They, despite having not mentioned this in their election campaign, immediately set to work to unwind environmental protection, to go backwards on policies that concentrated development within cities, to go backwards on commitments to reduce the use of highways. In fact, the sweep of the regressive policies and legislation that has been brought in by this government is just too much to enumerate. And many of you have joined us and many of the other people on this call on talking about some of these things in the program that we're all part of, called Years to Protect, which is about pushing back on these changes. A big part of these have involved the aggregate industry. And in fact, I had spent, and many others that are on this call, Graham, Sarah, David Donnelly, others, spent years trying to negotiate with the aggregate industry. In fact, we got to a point, because there had been so much conflict, so much cost for them fighting individual battles to try and build new quarries, operate them, abandon them, that they decided that maybe it made sense to negotiate a little bit with organizations like ours and community groups. And we sat down for several years trying to come up with a new voluntary standard around how quarries would be open. That is, where would you put them? What areas should you avoid? How would you operate them? So what would the standards of operation be? How often should you run the trucks? How noisy should they be? How much dust should they produce? How much groundwater should they use? And then how you would close them. What rehabilitation should look like? How much money should be set aside? How quickly that should be done? And we spent literally years and hundreds and thousands of person hours with community members and experts, raising money to support this, etc. And the minute that the new Ford government was elected, all of the companies that were participants in that voluntary process, which was called the Cornerstone Standards Council, all of them got up from the table and walked away and said, we don't need to talk to you anymore. We don't need to have a conversation with civil society. We can just go to this government and they'll give us everything we've ever asked for. They'll roll back the Endangered Species Act. They'll remove municipalities from decision-making around siting quarries, operating them and closing them. They'll run roughshod over what communities want in their backyard or what they're willing to tolerate, because the province will just overrule them. And so they got up from the table and they walked away. Well, I think that this new effort that is launching today, the effort to reform how aggregate extraction, or gravel, to use the colloquial word, is identified, how it's extracted, and how it's rehabilitated. I think the fact that we're now coming together to say no more until these rules are sorted out once and for all, in the public interest and the environment is protected, I think it's really, really exciting. It's time. I, for one, and our organization and all the people we work with are sick of being lied to by the aggregate industry, led down a garden path that they'll cooperate with us and develop standards that both produce aggregate that we need for our cities and our roads, but also do that in a responsible way. So I'm so excited to be part of this, really excited to be with all of you who are on the ground in communities, trying to protect the places that you love, the groundwater in your community, the natural heritage that surrounds you, the lakes and rivers and farmland, and not just have it disappear in the middle of the night because somebody who's well connected to the provincial government comes along and gets whatever they ask for. So thanks for having me here, and Environmental Defense will be here to help you out, bring a little bit of our expertise to bear, and really work with you to try and raise all of our voices to make sure that we see. Cheers.
Thank you, Tim. Some very strong words and some very good history about the, as he says, the arc that we've been on with this. I just want to echo, as he says, I was in that room for like 2.5 of those 3 years trying to make that standard work. And it was an eye-opening experience, shocking, to be honest, at times. All right, so next we've got another set of testimonials, another set of messages from those people who are dealing with the issue today. We're going to hear from Doug Tripp from the Concerned Residents Coalition, from Rhonda Kirby from the North Shore Environmental Resource Advocates, and from Gord Pinard, a Burlington Group core conserving our rural ecosystems. So let's hear about the messages from the trenches, the people that are in there working the issues today.
My name is Doug Tripp, and I'm here to talk about the hidden quarry case in Rockwood, which exemplifies much of what is wrong with the gravel mining industry in Ontario. James Dick Construction proposes to establish a limestone quarry in the Periscalt Moraine on the edge of Rockwood. So what is wrong with that? Well, first, the Ontario government does not adequately manage or regulate this industry, the result being countless unneeded pits and quarries. In our case, one of Ontario's largest quarries, the Acton Quarry, which is situated less than 9 kilometers away, is closed because of insufficient market demand to warrant its remaining in production. In fact, the licensed capacity of the Acton Quarry is 2.5 times that of the Hidden Quarry, plus another James Dick proposed quarry in Campbellville. Second, need for more product is clearly not driving this industry. Rather, it is entirely company bottom line motivated. The profits go to the companies while the risks are borne by the community. In our case, one important risk is potential contamination of nearby municipal wells in Rockwood. The majority of the 5,000 Rockwood residents are at risk if the municipal water supply is compromised. Installing water treatment to protect the water supply in this circumstance will require significant expenditures by the township and ultimately its residents. Third, the government has created a process that is biased against community advocacy on their concerns. The $800,000 we spent got us a decision rendered by an unaccountable government-appointed adjudicator who with breathtaking arrogance stated in his decision that, quote, "There is no question that a quarry will result in some disruption to the area during its operation. A generation will grow up during this time when compared to today, there will be regular blasting and more noise and trucks," unquote. Isn't that just too bad? Versions of our story are repeated all over the province, in community after community, almost always with the same result. The issues we all confront are systemic, and broad province-wide action is crucial to address them. That's why the time has arrived for this Dam campaign's call for a moratorium on new licenses to allow for reforms that will bring some sanity to this industry. It's why I and the citizens of Rockwood, Halton Hills, and Milton support this important initiative.
I'm Rhonda Kirby, and I'm speaking to you from Robinson Huron Treaty Territory on Lake Lozon along the north shore of Lake Huron. Not far from here is the site of a proposed quarry development. For now, until the blasting begins, the area is unspoiled. It's home to many plants and animals, including 5 known species at risk. The provincially significant wetlands in and around the quarry boundary are aquatic feeding areas for moose, and they flow into surrounding waterways, including Lake Lozon, Serpent River watershed, and eventually Lake Huron. I belong to a community group that's been working for a number of years now to protect this sensitive habitat. The environmental impacts of this quarry development will be severe and long-lasting. If approved, quarry operations will involve a complex water management process that's unprecedented. Water will be taken from nearby lakes and wetlands, pumping water for the life of quarry operations, over 120 years, with no clear long-term regulatory oversight. The rehabilitation plan suggests that 2 man-made lakes will be the end result if the quarry isn't abandoned before then. These lakes will take up to 400 years to fill if left to Mother Nature, 75 years to fill by pumping from nearby water bodies. At the end of the day, who will really be around to oversee rehabilitation? Aside from the obvious loss of habitat for every animal that lives there, what's most disturbing is the blatant disregard for the threatened and endangered species that are already struggling to survive. Peer-reviewed and published university research has documented a dense population of blandings turtles in the area proposed for the quarry development. If the permit's approved, this will mean destruction of identified critical habitat for the threatened blandings turtle, a species that's on the chopping block through the new pay-to-slay conservation fund. Designed to streamline the permit process, this fund is a free pass for developers to gain authorization for projects that will destroy sensitive habitat of species at risk. They pay and walk away. The area that we're trying to protect is Crown land. What happens on it affects everyone in the province, particularly First Nations who have a legitimate claim to those unceded territories. We need stronger protections and a more rigorous consultation process to ensure that resources are used wisely and that natural spaces are still there for future generations. The process is lopsided. It's business-driven, lacks transparency, and heavily favors the proponent. It's designed to ensure that permits and licenses are granted, and communities are bearing the brunt of this unrestricted development. Things need to change. Battles like ours are taking place across the province, and most of us are losing. They're time-consuming and costly, they divide communities, and the provincial government keeps changing the rules. Let's level the playing field. If we work together, we can change the scenario.
Hi, my name's Gord Pinard, and I'm from Core Burlington, a volunteer organization that has spent the past 2 years fighting Nelson Aggregate's plan to blast an additional 124 acres out of the Mount Nemo Plateau. We represent 2,000 citizens who have actively responded to our calls to action and fundraisers since March of 2020. The Mount Nemo Plateau on Burlington's escarpment is part of a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. Nelson has operated a 540-acre open-pit gravel mine on Mount Nemo for nearly 70 years. This massive below the water table pit has left us with a lunar landscape in an area that was once prime farmland and woodlands. In 2004, Nelson attempted to expand their gravel mining operation on Mount Nemo, seeking a license to destroy more prime farmland. After an expensive and exhausting 8-year fight led by citizens and with the support from the City of Burlington, the Region of Halton, Conservation Halton, and the Niagara Escarpment Commission, the application was unanimously rejected by the Joint Board in 2012. Fast forward 8 years, and Nelson decides to take yet another run at increasing their mining operation on Mount Nemo. In early 2020, like a zombie, their quarry application rises from the dead to once again stalk Mount Nemo, when Nelson applies for the second time to blast on the same prime farmland that was denied to them in 2012. But for this go-round, Nelson has doubled down, and they've added a second pit on a second site on escarpment greenlands. No should mean no. We should not be in a position once again of having to defend Mount Nemo. Nelson's gravel mining operation unnecessarily threatens air quality, water quality, public safety, and the habitat for the many species of wildlife who also call Mount Nemo home. In addition, this enormous crater has become a dump site for the importation of massive amounts of inadequately tested waste construction fill. Nelson Zombie Quarry will consume yet another 124 acres of prime agricultural land. That's equivalent to 93 football fields of irreplaceable lands, permanently destroyed. Once it's gone, it's gone. This moratorium and the dam campaign give the many Ontario gravel mining communities a voice in the fight for a sustainable tomorrow. Our issues are real. Despite being small, underfunded groups, we deserve to be heard. We deserve our issues to be taken seriously. There needs to be transparency and accountability in both the decision-making processes and the operational activities of gravel mining operators. Pausing the consideration of new gravel mining applications to allow for a holistic review of gravel mining and the establishment of appropriate processes and controls provides a path forward that addresses the needs of all stakeholders, not just those of the aggregate industry. Please support the dam campaign.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gord, Mount Nemo champion among many. Thank you so much to Rhonda and the chickadees that were accompanying her, and all of the people working up in the North Lake Huron to protect Blanding's turtles and more. And thank you to Doug Tripp, just up the road in Acton, Rockwood area. It is so wonderful to, in a weird way, to hear from so many different people and know that our issues and our concerns and our the systemic problems that we have all been in the middle of can be worked out, can be resolved, can be improved upon when we come together. And so I'm just I'm so happy to have such a good company tonight and going forward with the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition. So the next speaker that we're going to have is someone that I deeply admire. David Donnelly is a highly respected and committed environmental lawyer and advocate for smart growth and the environment. His wise counsel guided our community for many years on Mount Nemo and continues with Core Burlington and Pearl. He is a true champion of the environment. Please welcome my friend, David Donnelly.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to begin by offering my congratulations to the Wellington Water Watchers, Mike Balkwill, Graham, and Sarah, for putting together this amazing coalition. With environmental defense over the past 3 decades, I have been very fortunate to be on the ground level of organizing the campaigns to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine, the Greenbelt, Lake Simcoe, and so on. And through that experience, I can say that this feels very much like the same moment when those campaigns took off and created some of the best and most protected spaces in all of North America. But I can say this, through those campaigns, there was never a time when we had 1,200 people at a rally or at an event. So this is quite an extraordinary moment in Ontario environmental history, as far as I can tell. Now, if we could just start with my PowerPoint presentation, I'd like to present a few slides. If we could go to slide number 3, please. First, we're dealing with a scale of problem that I don't think anyone truly appreciates. If you imagine that they take 175 million tons of aggregates per year, now these are old figures, the industry is always lagging behind in its estimates, but just the number of trucks that are put on the road every year is millions of trucks. Those trucks extended end to end creates thousands and thousands of miles of traffic on our roads. I wonder if you added up all the trucks who were on the roads and you took them off the roads, or you reduced the number of trucks and found different modes of transportation like rail or water, would we need the Highway 413 at a cost of billions of dollars? Would we need the Bradford bypass? This is one of the questions that has to be answered, asked and answered by our government, the aggregate industry. If we go to the next slides, please. Now, the Toronto Environment Alliance helpfully created this image, which is to give people an appreciation of the scale of aggregate extraction that is going to occur in the next few decades. When we talk about the tar sands in Alberta and the destruction that it does to the boreal forest, we should turn our mind to Southern Ontario, the breadbasket of Canada, and how much land is consumed by these new aggregate quarries. If you look at that image created by T, you can see that in the next 25 years, the amount of gravel that we're going to extract would create a 60-foot deep, that's 20-meter hole in the ground that would roughly approximate the size of downtown Toronto from Greenwood Avenue and the beach all the way over to the Queensway at Hyde Park. That's an enormous amount of land that we're going to surrender. If we go to the next slide, please. Now, there is a clear advantage to producers through the process. I was very thrilled when we won the Pearl aggregate case on Mount Nemo, but you can put the number of lawyers in Ontario that have beaten back a quarry through this process on one hand. And these cases are extraordinarily expensive. Producers spend $1 or $2 million on hearings to have their applications approved. Those are pre-tax dollars. They write those dollars off, whereas the citizens who fight the quarries, those are after-tax dollars. It's simply not fair. Aggregate is still considered to be an interim use. They talk about rehabilitation of sites, but the industry refuses to produce the statistics in terms of how many of these sites are actually rehabilitated every year. And we have heard over and over and over again, including tonight, that there are so many of these pits that whose lives are extended simply to avoid the cost of rehabilitation. That has got to stop. Last but not least, the aggregate industry enjoys a huge advantage over other industries, extractive industries. For example, the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC logo that goes on forest products, that's extraordinarily valuable to consumers. AquaWatch and other industry certification programs advise consumers about what they're buying and how those natural resources are being regulated. But that's not the case for aggregate, and that should change. Finally, you heard 13 times the amount of aggregate is available as needed. Now consider housing. Through our growth planning exercises in Ontario, we make available enough land supply for 20 to 30 years of housing. We don't make 2 times the amount available. We don't make 5 times the amount available, and certainly not 13 times the amount available. So an industry as important as housing, the government of Ontario strictly regulates how much land is available for housing, and yet we're making an almost unlimited amount of land available to aggregate. If we could roll forward, please. As you've heard, the many changes through Bill 118, Bill 132 have removed municipalities entirely from regulation of quarries. In Rhonda's case, we're now arguing a case at the Ontario Land Tribunal where the government is now claiming that they have a completely eliminated municipal regulation on Crown land for quarries. Now picture that in our oceans, in our forests, Operating on Crown land means more government scrutiny, not less. The Ford government is now trying to change the law so that there is no municipal oversight on Crown land. If we go to the next slide, please. One thing that we can do is we can ask our local residents, local governments to take an interest in where this aggregate is coming from. Urban sprawl is a huge driver of the aggregate industry, particularly for infrastructure. We need to ask our municipal councillors in places, particularly in places where there are active municipalities against quarry operations, like in Milton, Burlington, Ramara, Halton Hills, etc. Stop buying from bad ground. That's what we need to tell our municipal councillors. I think that's an important part of this moratorium going forward. If you could have the next slide, please. Sprawl driver. If you think of most aggregate, if you think of most industries, they are extremely carefully regulated, not perfectly, but through the Caledon case with James Dick, you'll recall that one of the reasons why that quarry was turned down is we simply didn't have enough oversight. That's something that needs to be addressed. Currently, there is not enough oversight of quarries in the province. We have an enforcement and inspection and regulation problem that needs to be solved. Next slide, please. So again, I want to thank the organizers of this event. This is a tremendous moment in Ontario history, and I congratulate every single one of you for attending this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And if you didn't tell by the remarks, that's a skilled expert who's fought the fought, lived the life, and knows the rules, right? I mean, David has gone in there swinging for community after community, and I think his words were just very impactful in terms of laying out the overall arch of it. Okay, so we're at the point of the evening, and we are running a little bit late, but I hope everyone's fully engaged. The chat box just keeps going and that kind of stuff. I'll make my pitch for connecting on social media and signing the petition, and we'll put those links and those prompts in there for you. But we're now at the point to turn to the political side of the discussion. Not that we've ignored it thus far, but we're going to turn the floor over and let some of those leaders speak to us. The first group we're going to talk to is the municipalities, and I really want to set this up a little bit. Municipalities have an extremely challenging time when it comes to the gravel mining. You know, on the surface, they have complete control in as much as they don't approve the zoning to allow for a new gravel mine, then the provinces. The problem comes in the form of the OMB or the LPAT or now the Ontario Lands Tribunal. Because in most of these cases, that's the body that effectively makes the decision. So they take that control out of the municipalities' hands entirely. And even what limited control they have historically had is being eroded piece by piece. As David mentioned, some of these things, municipalities can no longer zone for either above or below the water table extraction. The industry can now self-file their own site plan amendments and change the nature of their sites that were originally accepted. Bylaws that used to deal with things like noise and hours of operations are now explicitly prohibited. And gravel mining operations take an extreme toll on local roads, and the levies collected come nowhere close to covering the full cost of these requirements. And on top of all this, municipalities are still accountable to their local residents who expect to be protected from the incompatibility of large open pits established within their communities. Many municipalities have had enough. And tonight, we welcome Rick Bonnet, the mayor of Halton Hills, to share his perspective.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and boy, what a good crowd tonight. And there are some councillors that are here, including Councillor Clark Somerville. And I, again, thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. So we've seen gravel quarries popping up all over Ontario, and they're popping up more than even cannabis stores that you see in the urban areas. And all you have to do, it seems today, is purchase 100 acres, hire consultants, go to the board against local communities, and voila. You get permission to dig a hole and permanently desecrate the landscape. And there's no need for proof that you need to have a quarry. As the resolution says, there's over 5,000 quarries in town. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. We do have a quarry south of Acton, the Dufferin Quarry, and it's one of the few that are really, I got to say, excellent corporate citizens. And they practice the cornerstone standards, which, as far as quarries go, that's the highest we can do. We know that. So Halton Hills Council, we asked the province some years ago to mandate every quarry to go at least to these standards, and of course it fell on deaf ears. And so going back to the quarry that I'm talking about, they were established in 1961, and about 20 years ago they looked for an expansion. Now we have in Halton Region a JART program, the Joint Area Review Team, and it took 7 years to get an approval. And with all the different environmental aspects, the neighbors, etc., 7 years. Fast forward, they haven't had their expansion yet. And guess what? This quarry has been closed since 2019. 2019, it's been closed. So all that work, meaning they don't have work to do. Yet Doug Tripp so eloquently talked about the hidden quarry, where our municipality, Milton, Halton Region, and Guelph-Fairmassa, all is universally condemned, over $800,000 spent, and one person on the OMB at the time makes a decision and says, it's a go. So just looking at Halton Region right now, we see we got the hidden quarry approved just outside of Halton Hills, which is going to affect us with the traffic and the truck traffic. There's one in Campbellville owned by the same quarry, James Dick. They bought another 100 acres back to the cannabis store. They're ready to get approvals. Nelson Quarry is coming back. And just last week, we found out on the other side of Halton Hills, the other side of Norville, Brampton Brick is looking at putting a quarry in. Now that goes back 10 years ago, and they withdrew their quarry application in 2018. And now they're coming back again because it's the Wild West. Anybody, as I said, you buy the land, get your consultants in, and away you go. So I think it's important that we ask for a moratorium with 5,000 quarries in Ontario. Do we need more? When I said the largest one here in Halton is Dufferin, and they haven't been operational in 2019 because they don't have the work. So on February the 7th, I'll be bringing a resolution to Halton Hills Council on the agenda for the resolution that's been prepared asking for a moratorium. And I anticipate that this will be supported unanimously. Also, there'll be another resolution asking the provincial government, we've done this before, asking for the abolishment of the OLT, because we're at the mercy, all municipalities are at the mercy of the OLT, and that's another part of it, like as Doug Tripp from the CRC said, and I lived through it, and I've lived through this. One person sits on a bench, and what does he do? He makes a decision that affected, on that one stroke of a pen, affected the Guelph, Fairmassa Township, Halton Hills, Acton, Georgetown, Milton, and again, Halton Region. So we're also asking for that. We've asked for this before a couple of years ago when I brought a resolution to Halton Region, and it fell on deaf ears. And it'd be very interesting to hear my upper tier levels of government that will be speaking after me. And I hope that they can carry this on as well. So anyway, I want to wish everybody a very good night, and I hope I didn't speak longer than I was supposed to. Anyway, take care, and thank you for listening to me.
You were perfect, Mayor Bonnet. Thank you so much. Thank you for your on-the-ground work all the details, all that history and knowledge. And thank you for committing to bringing this to your council as a resolution in a few weeks. Let's start the ball rolling and carry on. Thank you so much for your work and for being here tonight. The provincial government, as we know, as most of us know anyway, plays the most significant role in regulating and overseeing gravel mining in Ontario. We are very happy tonight to have 3 members of the Ontario legislature here to give their perspectives. First up, Sandy Shaw is the member of provincial parliament representing the riding of Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, as a member of the Ontario New Democratic Party and the NDP Environment Critic. Thank you for being here, Ms. Shaw, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me tonight. And I just want to start by saying how incredibly moving it was to listen to the elder Marilyn Caprio to start this. It really grounds what we're doing, because as an elected official, it reminds us that governments come and go, but our work is for future generations. And I just thought I'd also say, from the perspective of the legislature, the irony of the halls of Queen's Park. If you're an MPP, there's things carved in marble. And when we were talking about protect the track, Courtney Sky was talking about protect the track, carved in marble is the Lieutenant Governor Haldeman. His name is carved there, but it's kind of ironic that the name is carved in marble, but the commitment seems to have wavered. So I thought that from the Ontario perspective, it's very telling that we need to remember our history. And when it comes to the history, we're hearing that successive governments haven't really shown the leadership that we've needed when it comes to this file, particularly when it comes to the aggregate industry. But when it comes to Doug Ford, it's been said by many folks tonight, we've seen from this government just a full out assault on the environment. The list, as Tim has said, goes on and on. We've seen the kneecapping of conservation authorities, watering down any environmental protections. In fact, out and out breaking the law when it comes to the Environmental Bill of Rights, which actually was something that an NDP government put in place, and also an NDP government put in place the Independent Environmental Commissioner, and this government has scrapped that. And so we see the assault that this government has made on all kinds of our protections when it comes to the environment, MZOs, the list goes on and on. But now we see this massive push from this government to build a Highway 413 and the Bradford bypass going through the Greenbelt, and has been said here tonight, some of the richest agricultural lands in Ontario. And so, we can all see quite clearly, all the folks on this Zoom tonight can see quite clearly that this is part of Doug Ford's agenda that doesn't serve us at all, or the environment. It's there to ensure that land speculators and connected developers and donors get their way. And so that is why it's so timely. This Reform Gravel Mining Coalition is so important and so timely, because as we've been hearing, we know that the aggregate operations have such disasters and can have such disastrous impact on our water, our ecosystems, wildlife, natural habitats, farmland, the chickadees. I heard the chickadees too, Sarah. So, these are things that we all care so deeply about. And I'm will just like to say that I'm awed by the level of expertise of the people that have spoke tonight, the years and years of commitment to this, not only from the people that spoke tonight, but from all of the people on the call that deeply, deeply care about this. And it's amazing all the people you've got from all across Ontario. I know that in communities like Burlington, you've talked about Caledon, Cambridge, Durham, Wilmot, they're all dealing with contested applications. And I saw someone in the chat say that they're from Tiny Township. They said a water warrior from Tiny Township. Some of the purest water in the world, I believe, is being put at risk, and it's completely ridiculous. And I know we'd all agree with that. And it's ridiculous that in the middle of a climate crisis, this approval process doesn't even have a climate lens. And it's completely ridiculous and unacceptable that the consultation doesn't include First Nations that are affected. Ontario is a signatory to Treaty 9. They're a signatory to treaties that they don't respect. And so we need to make sure that affected communities are part of this application process going forward. And more than anything, we need a government and a process that makes sure we put the citizens, our environmental protections for now and for future generations at the heart of all these decisions. And so, I'll just end by saying is that as the environmental critic for Ontario's official opposition, there's been some dark days with this government, and I'm sure all of you feel that way. There's been some absolutely dark days, but we see a growing pushback. We see people now that are starting to understand what's at stake, and they're starting to come together, and there's momentum. I mean, I would just like to make sure that we acknowledge some of those victories. I mean, in Hamilton, we had Stop Sprawl Hamilton, was an amazing victory. We have Stop Sprawl Hamilton, the folks at Duckins Creek that pushed back from building an Amazon warehouse in a protected wetland. So this kind of momentum, this kind of excitement is exactly what we need now. I mean, people were sort of on their heels with this government, but I think finally people are understanding that we need to coordinate, we need to organize. And I just, I want to make sure that I thank all of the organizers, the researchers, the folks from all across Ontario that have come forward to join in this. And I would like to say two things. One, that there's an election in June. So if you really want to change this, I think we need to have a progressive government that actually acknowledges that there's a climate crisis and really is serious about protecting our environment and serious about listening to experts and listening to community members, and acknowledge, by the way, that most of these quarries are in PC held ridings. I could be wrong about that, but I just think that may be the case. And so June can't come fast enough, I don't think, for Ontario. And finally, the last thing I want to say is, if acronyms are any judge of a campaign, this damn campaign is in fine form. It's the best acronym I've heard in a long time. And I am proud and I'm happy to support the call for this temporary moratorium on new gravel mining applications in Ontario. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Thank you for your very clear support of the DAM campaign. It's greatly appreciated. And your facts are correct. Most of the aggregate issues are in PC ridings. So June's a time to make your voice clear. Exactly. Next up, we have Mike Schreiner. And Mike is the member of the provincial parliament representing Guelph, and he's also the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Graham. And just thank you so much to the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition for bringing us all together. And it's so inspiring to see so many people on this Zoom call. And I know so many of you, I feel like we've been working on fighting gravel issues for almost 15 years with some of you, and we're still fighting the same issues. We can't continue to lose 175 acres of farmland every day in Ontario. That's the equivalent of 5 family farms every week in this province. We've already paved over 75% of our wetlands in Southern Ontario. We can't do it anymore. We can't continue to put endangered species at threat. We can't continue to not uphold our treaty obligations. We can't continue to fail to protect our water for present and future generations. And that's exactly why I fully support this damn good campaign for a moratorium on new gravel mining permits in the province of Ontario. I've been calling for this since 2010. It's in the climate and environmental plan the Ontario Greens put out last fall. And I can tell you, when I think I saw somebody say something about food stock and soup stock, I remember when 30,000 people came together for food stock, and I think it was 40,000 for soup stock. And we got the government to agree to a review of the Aggregate Resources Act. And I want to remind us of this history, because it's why what you're doing right now is so important. We thought after Nemo was saved and St. Mary's was stopped in Flamborough and the Melanchthon mega quarry was stopped, we thought we had built the momentum to change the ARA and protect the places we love. And it didn't happen. And I remember the disappointment that so many of us have experienced. And so I want to thank you all for keeping up the fight. keeping up the fight to protect the places we love. I'll never forget the day when Bill 108 came to committee, and none other than the Association of Municipalities of Ontario came to committee and asked the government to indemnify municipal councils from their legal obligation to protect their residents' water because of the changes Doug Ford made to below the water table aggregate, the ability of municipalities to regulate that. I'll never just think about that for a second. Your municipal councilors, Mayor Bonnet and others, have asked to not have a legal obligation to protect your water because the province is taking away their ability to do that to support the aggregate industry. It is time in this province to have a balance. Aggregates trump almost every other land use, as David Donnelly so eloquently put it. That has to stop. So we need a moratorium until the Aggregate Resources Act can be reformed in a way that protects our communities, our environment, people, our health. We need a moratorium until better water protections are in place. I'll never forget trying to move amendments at committee to require Indigenous consent for water taking applications, and the Conservatives voted it down. Tried to do it to say municipal consent. Tories voted it down. We have to get better water protections in place. We need a moratorium to make sure that happens, to give us the time to have a sense of like, do we have enough aggregate or not? Like, it's unbelievable how many new applications are coming in. And the question is, do we need it? And I want to close by closing the loop, I think, on an incredibly important connection that has to be made. The threat, and Sandy Shaw, my colleague in the NDP, is right. Most of those quarries are in Conservative ridings. The direct threat to that farmland, that water, those places we love are directly connected to Highway 413, the Bradford bypass, and the government's agenda to supercharge sprawl. And that is directly connected to supercharging the climate crisis in Ontario. As Diane Sachs, the former Environment Commissioner, our deputy leader, has said, you know, these highway projects are Ontario's TMX pipeline. And if we're going to have any hope of stopping the climate crisis, we have to stop sprawl, we have to stop these highways, and we have to put a halt to new aggregate mining or gravel mining operations. So thank you all. Don't give up this fight. And it's fantastic to see my opposition colleagues here tonight so we can carry this message to Queen's Park together.
Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you for your long dedication to these issues and connecting the dots and working together with your colleagues. It's really important work and long overdue, and we're going to get there. Our final provincial representative, we're very, very pleased to have with us tonight, is Lucille Coulard, and she's the member of Provincial Parliament representing Ottawa-Vanier as a member of the Liberal Party and Liberal Environment Critic. Welcome, Madame Coulard.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Sarah. Good evening, bonsoir, Kwe. So yeah, my name is Lucille Collard, and I am the MPP for Ottawa-Vanier. And thank you for the invitation. I'm really pleased to be joining you on behalf of the Ontario Liberal Party. It's really, really great to see such huge participation from people from all over Ontario. And I want to thank my colleague. I mean, Sandy spoke very well, and you've just got to love Mike Schreiner's passion when it comes to environmental issues. And I generally agree with Mike. He's a great colleague. We all work together, and I guess we have to get together against this Ford government that's been really bad news for the environment. So as the Liberal critic for the environment, since I've been elected, which was only 2 years ago in a by-election, I took a significant amount of time to better educate myself about the various issues affecting the sustainability of our environment and how to better protect it. I have 4 kids, and environment has always been an important issue for me. even before I had kids, in fact. And my husband and I have committed to do our part in showing our children that every little bit counts. We've had solar panels on our house for more than 10 years. We compost, recycle, and we try to be responsible consumers. That being said, there are large issues and less known issues, and that also need attention. And the issue of gravel mining is certainly worth a good review. The facts that you have identified in support of that moratorium are very good indicators, I think, that need to be seriously considered. There's no question that the extraction of resources should be limited to what is necessary. What are we doing to our planet if we're wasting it? The protection of the environment and the impact of mining activities on our ecosystem should always be considered, and appropriate oversight measures and appropriate regulations are necessary. And real consultation with the Indigenous Nations and all Ontarians cannot be overlooked or ignored. Sadly, Ontario has elected a government that doesn't prioritize or seem to care about the environment. And someone put in a chat that the Ford government is a disaster for the environment. Well, I just cannot disagree. It's not enough that they don't do anything to protect the environment because they have no plan to do so, but they have also rolled back the progress that had been made so far. So they canceled the cap and trade program after companies had already bought into it. They spent $30 million fighting the federal carbon tax in court and $4 million in advertising campaigns to convince Ontarians that climate change is not important. They're selling off the green belt to wealthy developers and using MZOs to strip away the role of conservation authorities and bypass environmental laws and to do away with important consultations. They canceled the electric car rebate and ripped charging station off the ground. They canceled green energy contracts. And actually the list goes on. And, I don't want to be talking about only that tonight. On the other hand, you have the Liberal Party of Ontario that has a strong track record of making bold decisions to reverse the negative impact of human activities on the sustainability of our planet. I can tell you that our party remains committed to tackle these issues, to come up with bold policy decisions, because we believe that the future of our children deserves that much. That being said, I won't pretend that I am an expert in mining of any kind, and I certainly appreciate all the information that was shared tonight and all the presentations and presenters. It was very enlightening, and I've learned stuff that I didn't know. So your presentation tonight, this evening, is really good, and I've seen a lot of comments in the chat, people saying the same thing, that they're learning stuff tonight. So the Ontario Liberal Party is developing its action platform. As you know, that's why you invited us. You want us to weigh in. And I can tell you that environment is a big part of it. So I'll be glad to take tonight's message back to the table, namely that a moratorium is the only solution to force the review that's needed. And I join my colleagues to support this damn campaign, which is a great name, I agree. So just want to finish by saying thank you to the organizations and congratulations on an event that has captured a lot of attention. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lucille. We appreciate your comments and your commitment to take this back to the party. Well, I think we should all reflect on what we just heard. I think we heard some incredibly strong support from the people that are in the various positions that can help move this issue forward for us. I can tell you that internally part of our activity was to engage with the political parties and see what we could do, see what kind of involvement we could gather, see what kind of interest we could generate in our interest, in what we were putting forward. And the fact that we're at the point we are tonight, with the strong support we've heard and the strong acknowledgement that this is an issue and that needs to go forward, is, I think, something we should draw some comfort in. It should energize us. It should make us even more committed to move forward with the activities that we have planned for the campaign. And with that, I now want to ask to come to the forefront Mike Bockwell. Mike Bockwell is the Water Watchers campaign director, and he is the Reform Gravel Mining campaign manager. And he's going to spend some time now talking to us about exactly what we have planned for the campaign and how we could all participate in it. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Graham. As I get started, we've been talking about the moratorium, and there's a whole list of endorsements that we have already. And I think there's a slide that we're going to put up that shows who our endorsers, the endorsements we've received so far, getting ready to start this campaign. I'm going to make very brief comments. You've heard all about the issues tonight, and quite eloquently from people telling their stories, from comments in the chat box. I've really been inspired by the diversity of groups who've announced that they're here, the stories you're telling. And I'm going to come back to this theme, the fact that you're still in the fight. There are people there who say, I fought a quarry or a pit 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, and you're still mad as hell and you're not going to take it anymore. I find that very inspiring. Now, I work as a campaign director for the Water Watchers. I don't know, I'm not a technical specialist. I'm not a hydrogeologist. I'm not a planner. I'm not an air quality expert, but I'm a pretty good listener. And I've been hearing a lot over the past few years about the frustrations people experience, and I've heard that gravel mining is the #1 threat to groundwater. And we're the Water Watchers. And if groundwater is threatened, our ears perk up and we pay attention. And I'm not going to summarize what you've heard tonight, other than to say these are real issues. People have real frustrations. You see them in the chat box, you hear the stories, but here's the thing. There's been real resistance. People have not given up. People are still want to work together. And while what you're doing in your local community to protect the places you love is vitally important, we need to work together. Because you know the story of David, Davida versus Goliath. The corporate Goliath, many of the multinationals who are the gravel mining industry, they have deep pockets. I'm stunned by the fact that they can spend $1 million getting their application through. And they've got their own industry association here in Ontario, and their executive director, Ken Cheeseman's here in the meeting. Maybe he's got some pals with him too, checking out what's happening here. And I hope he goes back and tells people that they've got a fight on their hands. Now, the industry is not going to change who they are. It's in their nature to want to make as much profit as they can by digging as many holes as they can, building up their reserves, not being inconvenienced. That's their nature. The real problem for us, and you've been telling us this for a long time, is that you're having to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, spend years of your volunteer time and life when you could and should be doing something else, fighting to make your own government try and protect you. And that's what's problematic. Now, we've just heard from 3 political parties. We haven't heard from the Conservatives. We'll come back to that. And I want to make it very clear this campaign is nonpartisan. Politically, we're nonpartisan. We don't care which party imposes a moratorium to reform Gravel Mining Coalition. We want to make it clear that any candidate will pay a political consequence if they don't commit to imposing a moratorium on new gravel mining approvals. What we are partisan about is we're partisan about protecting the places we love, protecting the environment, protecting the water, protecting the communities, and working together for justice, whether it's local democratic planning or being sure that we honor our treaty agreements because we're all treaty people. So that's what we're partisan about. And we've put together a campaign that's, somebody named Janice put a comment in the chat box that said we need a multifaceted campaign. Janice and others, we've planned a multifaceted campaign. Now, we can't talk about all the details of it right here because Norm and others are on the call with us, Norm Cheeseman and other people from the industry. They'll find out pretty soon what that campaign's all about. But there are 4 actions that we're going to ask you to take. And I think we've got another slide to look at. The website is, I think the website address is in the chat. And the very first action we want you to take in the next couple of weeks, what's starting tonight, starting tomorrow, and to build on in the next week or so, is to sign and share the petition. Now, 1,200 people RSVP'd for this meeting, and we're going to send you all, everyone who RSVP'd is going to get an email tomorrow. We're going to ask you to sign the petition. And we're going to ask you to sign it with 10 to 10 other people and ask 10 other people to sign the petition. And if all of you do that, we'll have 10,000 signatures in a week. So that's our goal, is to get 10,000 signatures on the petition in the next week. So for first task is for you to sign and for you to share it. Share it with your friends, your family, organizations you belong to. Over the course of the campaign between now and the June election date, we're going to ask those 10 people to share it with 10 people. And our goal is 100,000 signatures by the election. And the important part of that petition is we're then going to reach out to people and ask them to do other things. The second thing we want you to do is to send an email to your MPP. On our website, there's a form letter that you can fill in, you can edit. The email will go to the Premier Ford, some ministers in his cabinet, and to your local MPP. So your other task to do in the next day is to send your own email. Again, we're going to ask you to support that and extend that to other people. We're going to have an activity on Groundhog Day. And so we'll talk more about that when you sign up for it. We picked Groundhog Day because of the movie, The Groundhog Day. Do you remember that movie with Bill Murray, where it seems like he's waking up every day to a bad dream that doesn't end? That's what the experiences people have told us of dealing with gravel mining companies and gravel mining applications and a government in their backyard. So we're going to take that Groundhog Day and we're going to make that work for us, because we want to wake up from that bad dream. And the moratorium is the first step in doing that. The last action we want you to take this week and the next couple of weeks to think about is to invite the DAM campaign to your community. Now, we like Demand a Moratorium Now. We like our acronym. And you can invite us to come and do a meeting like this in your community. We'll present the issues. We'll work with you to highlight what's going on in your community. We'll talk about actions people in your community can take, and we will fundraise in your community for your campaign. We've already started to schedule meetings. We'll be going in the next, starting near the end of February, we'll be going to Caledon to support the Forks of the Credit Preservation Group. We'll be going to Burlington to support CORE and Protect Mount Nemo. And we'll be going to Wilmot Township to support SAM, Citizens for Safe Groundwater, and to stop the Hallman Pit. So there are lots of groups that I saw in the chat box who are here tonight. Some of you are new to us, new to me anyway. Very happy to hear from you. And please connect with us. We want to connect with you. Because that brings me back what I want to say. While these are kind of individual actions we're describing, we're really building a collective campaign. This campaign is designed, intends to add value to your work, to strengthen the work you're doing in your community, to protect the places you love, and to elevate the issue, to expand the awareness of the cumulative impacts of gravel mining in Ontario, and in all the ways that people have talked about tonight, to bring attention to the intersection between gravel, highways, sprawl, the climate crisis, and the injustice of the the overrides that happen to local democratic planning in communities with municipalities, and to the complete disregard of the treaty rights of Indigenous Nations in Ontario. So that's what the campaign's about. And I've lost track. Oh, there, I've opened my chat box. I've not been able to keep up with it while it's all going on. But that's the campaign. We're very pleased with the steering committee that we have together. We're very pleased with the coalition partners that we have with Environmental Defense, Wilderness Committee, Council of Canadians. If you haven't endorsed the moratorium now, you can also do that through the website. And we have lots of plans that we're going to engage with you over in the next few months. I'm now going to I have one more action to ask you to do, and that's to help us raise some money tonight. So I'm going to ask Sarah Harmer to come join me on the screen again, and we'll take the slide down. And I want to tell you that we've got a basic campaign budget that we've created of $75,000. And I'm very pleased, Sarah, to tell everybody, we've already have commitments for more than $43,000, which is more than 50% of the campaign. And I'd just like to describe that briefly for people. In the meeting tonight with one of us, pardon me, in the meeting tonight with us is one of the Water Watch's key donors. And this person made a $25,000 commitment to start the campaign. Wow. To prime the pump for our budget. We're very, very appreciative. Thank you very much. The Wilderness Committee has pledged $5,000 as a coalition partner. The Council of Canadians has pledged $2,500. And please, more applause for them, clapping, hooting, emojis, notes in the chat box. And that brings us up, that number, if my math is right, brings us to $35,000 or so. My math is a little off. Earlier this week, I spoke with Graham Flint, who's the co-chair, and Graham and his wife Silka have made a $5,000 contribution to the campaign. So we're starting the campaign with $43,000. That's fabulous. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Silka. Thank you, the key donor. Thank you to our partners. What I'd like to do in the next 10 minutes or so, Sarah, and I want you to help me out with this, is ask people to make donations now to see if we can make pledges, pardon me, to see how much of the balance we can raise. $75,000 will give us a good start, start on the campaign. We've got a kind of a stretch budget of $90,000. And here's how this is going to work. We're going to, donations to the campaign are eligible for a charitable tax receipt through our project called the DAM campaign through the Small Change Fund. And we're going to put the Small Change Fund link in the chat box now, I think. And what I'm going to do, to all of you who are out there in the audience who can see me, but I can't see you, is ask you to make pledges. And I'm actually going to start with a number. And I'm going to want to ask if there's somebody in the audience who would like to pledge a matching amount to Graham and Silka. Is there someone who would match their donation of $5,000? I see Maria from Tech has just pledged $1,000. Thank you, Maria. And I want you to all folks to put your telethon hat on because we're going to try and keep a running total here for the next few minutes. So thanks, Maria. And Donna says, when I click the link, it says error. So that's not good. Maybe somebody in the back can check there and see what's happening. But will someone make a pledge of $5,000? Is that a possibility? And now I know you're sitting there, there's people are sitting by their computer, Sarah, they may be talking to people in their household and saying, can we pledge $5,000? And the pledge can be paid in installments. You don't have to make that payment tonight.
Now is the time. We are building this groundswell. It does seem like liftoff is happening. So if you can, this would be a wonderful time.
Janice Gamble says, how about $500? That'd be fabulous, Janice. I'm starting at, sorry, not 5,000, but 50. Pat, that's terrific. While somebody, you may be thinking out there about 5,000, by the way, you can let us know anonymously if you'd like to make that pledge through the megan@wellingtonwaterwatchers.ca email. Is there somebody who might want to make a pledge of $2,500? You can make an anonymous message in the chat through Denny as well. Is there someone who would consider making a pledge of $2,500? Because that would bring us up to $46,000 total if that was to happen. Jack Eva, pardon me, is in for 500, and he'll try and find 10 friends to do the same to get to 5,000. Well, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. And Anna's pledged $500. That's terrific. I can't read as fast as the chat's going. Donna Dewar says, Mike, count me in for $2,500.
Wow.
No, I wasn't. That was a private message to me, and I wasn't supposed to read the name out. So just erase that from your head. But we did get an anonymous pledge. You hear me say it was anonymous, of $2,500. So thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to do that? Our family will pledge $5,000. Wow.
Amazing.
So I don't know who iPhone family is, but thank you very much, iPhone family. And Sandy Agnew says, how about $1,000? I say that's fabulous. Sandy, and Margaret Newell says, I'll send a check for $2,500. And somebody anonymously just offered $2,500.
Wow.
And Michael Dubé says $500. Now I know somebody over there has an abacus and they're pushing little beads sideways, and they're going to give us a total in a little while. Diane Miller pledges 100. David Jeffrey is going to be one of Jack Eva's 10 at $500.
Thank you.
Another private message for 500. Elizabeth Fedorko for $100. Thank you. Peter and Julie pledged $500. Another anonymous 2,500. Another anonymous 500.
Amazing.
This is fabulous. We're at 15,000 in pledges so far. So that 15 plus 43, I think, takes us to 48, 58. So 58 to 75 is another, help me out, Sarah. I haven't got enough fingers on my hand.
Oh, we got 7. Oh, geez. You didn't say I'd have to do math, Mike.
Well, okay, so 75 take away 58 is 5 take away 8, carry the 3 is, somebody's going to tell me we're at 19.5 now, so that helps a lot because that puts us at 63, which means we're $9,000 away.
Wow.
From reaching our goal of 75,000. Now somebody's just donated to 500 and we'll donate another 400 in a month. Chris and Diane for 1,000. Moxie's going to get Mike an abacus for his birthday. So Mike's birthday is February the 8th for all of those who want to write that down. So you've got time to order the abacus and get it delivered in time for my birthday. Another 250. Tony Savalka and Eileen Marco for 300. Thank you, thank you. Lynn says if everybody on the board gave 100, you'd have half more than your target. Everybody on board, you're right. Well, 100 people times $1,000, it's 100,000. Now we do appreciate that some people are in a position to give more and some to give less. And so we appreciate all donations and we want this to be equitable and fair. Jocelyn Radcliffe says, just talking to my partner, we're good for $100. Thank you, Jocelyn. And Jocelyn, I think you and I are going to have a phone call because you're with the Registered Nurses of Ontario, I think, with our environmental committee, and we really want you to endorse our moratorium. Gary Gamble's going to match Janice's $500 pledge. Douglas is going to add 500 to the pot.
These are all amazing investments. Thank you, everyone.
Margaret Newell says, who do I write my check out to? So Margaret, I'm going to ask somebody to send you a private message and tell you exactly who you write the check out to, which is the Small Change Fund. But though one of the Water Watcher staff who's doing such a fabulous job of producing this event will give you a comment. And 500 from the Kirbys. Mike, will you be able to tell us what the $75,000 will go towards? Yes, I will. So first of all, we're creating all kinds of content. So you've seen the website, you've seen the video. I'm a little nervous because the opposition's listening to tell all the things we've got planned and are in the works, but we've got a whole bunch of assets that we're creating. They're going to be valuable to local groups. We're also hiring a full-time organizer for 6 months to provide direct hands-on support to people in all the communities. My work on this campaign, I should say this actually, my time is being covered by the Water Watchers. So that's a donation, that's a kind of a donation in kind to working on the campaign. And if those are the big expenses that we're going to be making in the campaign. I got a private message for $100 from somebody and Maggie and Barry for 200. Now I'm watching the clock. It's 9 o'clock, which is the witching hour. I'm just going to check my abacus report here. We're over $24,000 in donations so far, and they're still coming in. So Sarah, I'm going to give this back to you and Graham. We've achieved our goal. It's fabulous. I think there's a couple of things here we should just, maybe I'll say this, Sarah, and then I'll stop. I think tonight is a tremendous show of support. All of the people who we've seen who've attended, the experience you have, the contributions you've made in the years gone by and are still willing to make, the fact that you're still in the fight and want to be in the fight with each other is inspiring and astonishing. We heard tonight levels of commitment from 3 political parties and from one mayor, but I think he's the tip of the iceberg. We've heard commitments from lots of allies, and I think there's great recognition here that this a moratorium on gravel mining intersects with a lot of issues that are very important to all of us and will enhance what's going on. I don't need to repeat what everybody said about what the threat is that the Ford government agenda poses to the environment during a time of climate crisis and makes injustice worse. Together, we can all work together. We can make a difference. We can make a damn difference as we demand a moratorium now. So I think my work here is done for tonight, Sarah. I'm going to hand it back to you and Graham.
Thank you, Mike. Well done. Thank you.
Wow, Sarah, what an evening, eh? This has just been absolutely, I think we reached the concept of historic, don't you?
I do. Yes, absolutely.
The energy that we've been able to share tonight with each other has just been amazing. We want to thank everyone that's kind of hung in there with us and that kind of stuff. This is going to take all of us working together. And I want to go to one quick point in that. It came up actually in a press interview I had today, and they brought up the specter of the word NIMBY, not in my backyard. And it was fascinating because as we talked about it, it became very clear, many ways we can look at that. The first way I like to look at it is, there's another play on those same letters. Next time it might be you. And when it comes to gravel mining, unfortunately, that's a very likely situation. And that's the other part of NIMBY that I'd like to sort of boldly embrace. I mean, if everyone takes care of their backyard, we'll have a wonderful Ontario to live in. And I think the industry needs to reflect on the fact that these aren't NIMBY issues. It's every community that they go to that has concerns about the approach and concerns about the process and concerns about the legacy that they're going to be left with. I see words in the chat box going and saying, I'm a proud NIMBY, and I think you should be. But my point is, if it's a NIMBY issue, it's Ontario that's the backyard we're all protecting. And what we're saying is that we can't let this destruction and this injustice continue across Ontario. Sarah, what are your thoughts about tonight?
I agree with you. I want to thank everyone for your energy. I feel so bolstered. It's no longer, just working away in your own little small part of the world on this. This is province wide, and we have these issues that we all share and that we can work to change. And we have to do that coming together. And tonight is, as you say, a historic start. And thank you for the company and the energy and the expertise. I want to also thank everyone who participated tonight, who spoke, who sent in videos, all of our guests. Thank you for your involvement. Thanks to everyone for RSVPing, for the hundreds and hundreds of people who have shown interest and support, and the donations that have rolled in and will continue to, hopefully. This is what we need and what we can do together. So thank you. Also, behind the scenes, this night wouldn't have been possible without Megan Clout, Danny Lindemood, and Horeen Hassan for your work, pushing all the buttons, connecting all the dots, getting everybody in together. And to our next and final guest we're going to invite back, thank you so much to Anishinaabe Elder Marilyn Capriole to close our event. Thank you, everyone, and let's go onwards with this. I look forward to it. Marilyn, after you.
Well, I haven't felt so much spirit transmit between person to person, nation to nation in a long time. And I really want to comment again my miigwetches to our young lady, Kathy, for being responsible to put out that tobacco, asking for what's transpired here tonight. We talk about history. This evening, we are the history. Talk about determination. We have had so many examples of people who have gone on before us. And I'd like to mention one person of absolute admiration in my eyes, and that is our late Nokomis Josephine Ba Mandaman. She passed a few years ago. I don't think that I have ever met a humble, hardworking person as she did, one step after the other, walking and praying around the Great Lakes, not once, but twice. And her last journey, just shortly before she left us, making sure that we knew the directions, what to follow, the determination, and how to gather the people, the spirit, just like today. You've been very successful in having what we call the Zonia bundle. We don't have a word for money, so this is the Prosper Bundle Zonia, meaning the same thing. That is the kindness of the people that give a hoot. That's just amazing. What the opportunities that I've had in my age time is greeting and meeting the petroglyphs and the pictographs that are left behind from another ancient time in history. And I always wonder the digging of the ground. I cannot tell you what it feels like to be called upon as an Anishinaabeg elder to put to rest bones that have been accidentally dug up, and to re-put them back again, not knowing who the person was in the time before us. And these are things that you never hear about. And it always worries me thinking about those grandfather rocks, the base of our land that holds that sacred medicine, the Nibby. The markings that were left behind that need to be fed sometimes, fed with water in order for us to see them. It's not just about one thing, it is about much other things as well that we probably don't even think about. But I congratulate you again. Don't lose your energy. Don't lose your train of thought. And the one thing that I did not hear tonight was I. I don't think one person spoke about I, that word I. It is we. And I congratulate you men for using that word as much as you did, we. And that's right, it's about we. I'm so grateful for having the privilege of sitting with you, amongst you, humble. And your work and the work of the people deserve an honor. So with that, the prayer in closing, we don't have a word for goodbye in our language because we didn't know what that was. We simply say, Wamampi, Wamampi Gowawamin. And that means until the next time. Might be a month, might be 2 years, but somewhere there will be a next time. So in honor of all that work, your concern for the earth, your concern for the star world, and the men to allow us to visit in that airspace. Very grateful. When we talk about the 13 moons, they sit in the night. Every day, grandfather sun, Mashomas Jesus, rises from that east direction, giving us new life to every day, not just us, but everything that is on this planet. Everything, big, small, on top of the water, under the water. That's quite a gift. Acknowledging it is easy. And with that, be glad get manero. Hey, hey, ho. Hey, yo, hey, hey, ho. Me quet manero. Yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo. yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, yo mi che manato yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, mi manoro yo hey, yo hey, yo hey, Miigwech Shabnado, Miigwech Mashomas, Miigwech Lokumisak, Miigwech. Palmon. Till the next time.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for being with us here tonight. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your words, and your song. We're truly honored with your participation tonight. So that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up. It's been a long evening. We thank you for hanging in there with us. We appreciate everyone's engagement. The chat box has just been alive. I'm going to give you a couple reminders, and then we're going to play the video for you one last time to close out the night. We will, by the way, leaving the chat box open for a little while so that you can continue to chat. If you're trying to connect with people or finish off a conversation, we'll leave it open until we see that the activity's been sort of died off. So a few things. Go to the website, sign the petition. Connect with us on social media and start sharing the message so that others can do the same thing. If you're able to make a pledge, turn that pledge into a firm commitment. From what I could read in the chat box, it sounded like we were overloading the donation website tonight, which is a nice problem to be able to have. But it is still something we want you to hang in there and work through it. The final thought I want to give to you is just how significant tonight was. This is a launch of a movement. This is a launch of a wave of activity. I was really humbled when David compared it to the launch of some other social initiatives that have happened. But it's only going to succeed if we do it together. It's only going to succeed if we all come together and keep this going. But tonight is any evidence of where we can take this movement. We're going to get there. So sign the damn petition to support the damn moratorium, and let's get this thing on the road. Here's the video one last time, and good night.
We're in too deep. For decades, the gravel mining industry has blasted, dug, crushed, and trucked across Ontario with apparent impunity. And we've let them. Year after year, the leaders we've given the job of protecting our province to have handed them the shovels and said, go, dig more. Go dig over 5,000 enormous sites in our backyards. Go dig out 13 times more gravel every year than what we use. Go destroy 5,000 acres of land a year and take up to 4.6 billion liters of precious water every day. Go destroy the natural environment and damage our communities while paying less property tax than some single families do. Go accelerate the climate crisis by feeding sprawl, highways, cement production, transportation, and other massive causes of greenhouse gases. And finally, go do it all without any consent of First Nations, as our Constitution says you must. It's already too late for some communities. Those who bravely fought the impossible David versus Goliath battles, they rarely had a chance to win. This multinational, foreign-owned industry is so unchecked and self-regulated and so deep-pocketed that the moment you try to stop one site, another appears somewhere else. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to say enough. No more new sites, period. We, the people of Ontario, demand that our government impose an immediate moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals until an independent panel can chart a new path forward. One that will honor First Nations treaties and obligations, prevent more climate destruction, protect groundwater and farmland and endangered species, and give the communities dealing with these sites more say in how land use is decided. Sign the petition to demand a moratorium now at reformgravelmining.ca.